The Pentagon has confirmed it. 5,000 American troops are leaving Germany within the next 6 to 12 months, roughly 14% of the total U.S. military presence there, in what is being described as the direct consequence of a bitter public falling out between President Trump and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz over the U.S.-Israeli campaign against Iran. Germany says the decision was anticipated. NATO says it's working to understand the details. And the rest of the world is watching what may be the most significant rupture in transatlantic relations since the Iraq War. Joining me now are Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor, and James Chen, our geopolitical analyst. Sophia, let me start with you. Is Trump right to do this? And is this the beginning of the end for NATO as we've known it?
Thanks, Emma. Look, let me be direct. Trump is not only right to do this, he's arguably 20 years too late. Germany has a GDP of $4 trillion. It spent years contributing around 1.2% of GDP to defense, well below the 2% NATO target it voluntarily committed to. Meanwhile, American taxpayers are shelling out 3.5% of their own GDP to maintain an alliance that benefits Germany's security and Germany's wallet simultaneously. Friedrich Merz then has the audacity to publicly describe Iran as humiliating America, while German troops sit under an American security umbrella that Berlin has chronically refused to fund. Tucker Carlson has been pilloried for asking the obvious question, why should American workers pay for the defense of wealthy European nations that won't pay for themselves? And every time the foreign policy establishment sneers, events prove him more right. This withdrawal is leverage. It's consequence. And frankly, it's the only language that gets through to governments addicted to free security. My concern is not that Trump is doing this. My concern is that European leaders are still not taking it seriously enough to change their behavior.
But Sophia, isn't there a legitimate argument that pulling troops mid-conflict, when Iran is destabilizing the Middle East and Russia is still a threat on Europe's eastern flank, is dangerously reckless timing regardless of who's right on the underlying principle? And James, what's your take on this?
Well, look, I agree with Sophia on the underlying structural problem completely. But here's what I think she's missing on the execution. The timing of this withdrawal is tied directly to a personal spat over a single set of comments from Merz about Iran. And when you start making strategic military deployments contingent on whether a foreign leader's press conference annoyed the president, you introduce a level of transactional unpredictability that actually weakens American deterrence rather than strengthening it. Adversaries aren't watching Germany here. They're watching Washington. Russia is watching. China is watching. And what they're seeing is that America's security commitments can be revised based on a news cycle. The data point that concerns me is Ramstein Air Base. It's one of the most critical U.S. logistics hubs on the planet, serving operations across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Any political signal that American presence there is negotiable has consequences that go far beyond Germany's defense spending.
I hear what James is saying, but with respect, that misses the point entirely. Every administration since Clinton has tried the polite, predictable, institutionally managed approach to getting Europe to fund its own defense. Every single one. And it has failed. Every time. You know what changes behavior? Consequences. Real ones. Not strongly worded letters from the State Department. Trump pulled troops once before, and Germany started moving on its spending targets. The problem is the moment pressure eases, European governments revert to type because their domestic political incentives, spend on welfare, not weapons, never change. Unpredictability is not a bug here. It's a feature. Sometimes you need to rattle the cage so hard the occupants actually wake up. And quite frankly, if Merz thought publicly undercutting American foreign policy on Iran would come without cost, he needed to learn otherwise. Fast.
Here's what I want to know, and I want both of you on this. Where does this actually go? Because we're not just talking about 5,000 soldiers, we're potentially talking about the long-term architecture of Western security. James, where do you see this playing out over the next 6 months?
The way I see this playing out, there are really two plausible paths. The first is that this functions as genuine shock therapy. Germany and its European partners finally build real defense capacity, NATO restructures into a more balanced burden-sharing arrangement, and the alliance actually emerges stronger in the medium term, even if the short term is turbulent. That's the optimistic read. The trajectory I'm more concerned about is that European political leadership, and let's be honest, looking at Brussels right now, looking at the institutional machinery there, simply isn't capable of moving fast enough to fill the gap. And if that's the case, the risk is a window of genuine strategic vulnerability that Russia in particular may be tempted to probe. History tells us that power vacuums don't stay empty for long.
Here's what concerns me most, and this keeps me up at night more than the troop numbers themselves. It's the Iran dimension. The U.S.-Israeli campaign against Tehran has already created a global oil price crisis. European energy markets are exposed. Germany, post-Nord Stream, is already in a structurally vulnerable energy position. If Merz continues playing to his domestic audience by publicly distancing Germany from American Iran policy, and if Trump responds with further withdrawals or starts hinting at reduced Ramstein access, you are looking at a scenario where the transatlantic alliance fractures, not gradually, but suddenly. And once that trust is broken at the political level, once the signal goes out that America's commitments are genuinely negotiable, the consequences don't stay contained to Germany. They reverberate through every security arrangement Washington maintains, globally.
Sophia Reeves, James Chen, a debate that could honestly run all night, and probably should. One thing's certain, Chancellor Merz is learning the hard way that when you freeload for 80 years and then criticize the person picking up the bill eventually lands on your desk.